DFI perspective, regulators, FI, and various stakeholders to see how can we enhance that market. And probably Ivan, will be able to comment here. He has been one of lead person when he was within the financial market in pushing the development of the financial market in Tanzania. And I believe various other markets have gone through different cycles. So we need to ensure that that continuity remains. And I think finally, we need some sort of optimal structure to de-risk. And it was good to see from the final presentation that there are some of the structures in place that are coming through. But it has to be optimal and cost efficient as well for the entire structure to work appropriately. And for the banks as well, because as I mentioned, that we also need to bear in mind that there is cost of compliance, Basel III, etc., which is increasing the capital ask, and then therefore, and hence therefore, the shareholder value that we need to ensure that it is created. Finally, if I can just add, all these fundings that are coming through, I believe, are in foreign currency, which is great. Pension funds locally here will be able to give us a leeway, equity markets in local currency. But we need to bear in mind, because bigger portion of funding that is coming through is in foreign currency. How do we get the local currency running? Because otherwise, what we are doing eventually is running a risk in terms of not only interest rate, but FX risk as well, that is being faced. And the eventual taker of these funds actually will pass on to clients. So I think at the end of the day, we are the consumers, and how do we ensure we think around that? So I believe there are various structures that can come up. As regulators, as I said, it's a fine piece of engineering policy that is required between all the stakeholders to ensure that we get some of these challenges on board. And I think it was mentioned yesterday by our president. The challenges are abound, it will be there. The issue is, how do we create solutions around that? And I believe nobody will come from outside to help us. Yes, they can help us, but it is us, 15, 16 countries, putting our minds together and coming up with a solution that works locally here. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaino. I'm wondering if I can get an immediate reaction from Linda, from NMB. So NMB has a distribution throughout all the regions or all the districts within the country. You therefore have seen quite a bit in terms of agri-business or industry requests from your client base. And just to see what your reaction in terms of what are the opportunities and challenges there. If I could just ask Zaino to switch off his mic, please. Right? And then we'll hear from Dr. Thomas and Sabrina Ahmed. Lubna Ahmed, sorry.
Thank you, Ivan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As previously mentioned, my name is Linda Tegisa. I'm the head of trade finance at NMB. I'm also quite optimistic, to be honest, because I think the presentations that were provided today with respect to the challenges and opportunities basically point to opportunities in response to addressing some of the challenges that do exist in the financial markets. In addition to that, I was particularly inspired by the managing director of TIB, Mr. Charles Singili, who essentially talked about the partnership within DFI. So, for instance, when you take the approach of regional DFI partnerships, it becomes extremely compelling in order to basically achieve scale as far as supporting industrialization development within the region. In addition to that, there is some clear synergies that exist between the local DFIs from a regional perspective, as well as, the offshore DFIs, if we can refer them to that. So to this, basically referring to the two presentations that were provided by the EU, as well as Dr. Swaburi, who also inspired me in the sense that I can tell my children, you can change your career anytime. And so it is quite interesting to note that, the opportunity for partnerships between both local and foreign DFIs is essentially what is going to promote the, financial markets within the region. So for instance, NMB has a clear example where we were able to work with a local DFI in order to support an infrastructure project here in Tanzania. And the result of that was essentially to finance and fund a key infrastructure project up to $56 million. So the question to the SADC delegates here today is, why can't we replicate such structures into the development of industrialization? And the question is, the response is yes, we can do that, and we can do that effectively through these partnerships, meaning that both commercial banks need to take an active participation in linking up with these DFIs in order to ensure that we're able to leverage some of these opportunities. Now, back to the aspect of NMB having a broad network. There was another aspect that was raised in the presentation of Mr. Charles Singili, was that how do we link SMEs and industry? Now, linking SMEs and industries, SMEs for the time being are likely partners when it comes to basically participating in the supply chain of these industries. And so as such, a bank like NMB and other commercial banks within this market have basically undertaken quite a number of supply chain financing initiatives, which vary in terms of structures, but however, these are essentially able to support the SMEs in order to participate in the industry level, and also to build up their capacities in order to be able to effectively contribute to the development of industries within the region. So I like to keep time, so I'll stop at that and we'll take further questions as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. If we can now get a perspective from the regional DFIs from the Arab Development Bank, specifically the representative on stage, Ms. Ahmed, if we can also get some of your reactions to the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for inviting us to this important event, SADC Industrialization Week. We are from the Arab Development Bank. I want to add my voice to the presentation of Mr. Alawi Sabari. Actually, you have posted Abu Dhabi Fund and Saudi Fund. And actually, Badia, my institution, is the gateway for this institution to Africa. We have what we call it Arab Coordination Group. Arab Coordination Group comprises of 11 Arab institution fund. They are sitting quarterly and looking at projects in Africa. So Badia is the secretary for this coordination group, and in this we are pulling for all the infrastructure project, including social project in Africa. So I agree, the finance is there, the fund is there, but the issue is the proper information and proper utilization for these funds. Coming from my organization, we have a limited financial resources. That's why we are capitalizing in partnerships with Arab organizations and partnership with non-African Development Bank per se, which have a huge work in the area. So we are capitalizing on this. And as I mentioned yesterday, we are using key instrument for financing, co-financing, blended finance, and crowd-in finances. This is our instrument for our projects. Availing this in soft and concessionary loan, blended PPP arrangement, new and specialized fund. Plus, we are giving grants for feasibility study in aim to produce bankable project, and this is really the issue of project preparations when most of the project in Africa facing difficulties in this area. Nonetheless, we have broad opportunities in this area. We have to look at it. As Dr. Sabari, Mr. Sabari mentioned, the Belt Road Initiatives, which is Chinese government involving in infrastructure and investment in Africa, involving 152 countries. SADC are not part, but the spillover of this trade and investment definitely will affect the SADC region. So we have to capitalize and look at these initiatives. Badia and Islamic Development Bank, they have initiative, we call it Arab-Africa Trade Bridge. So we are bridging the two areas because our mandate is to facilitate and strengthening the cooperation between Arab and Africa region. So the ultimate objectives of Arab-Africa Trade Bridge is unleashing the potential for sustainable economic growth through enhanced regional economic cooperations. And here we are looking for the exporter and importer and the trade opportunities between the two regions. Also, Africa should capitalize in light industries such as textile, which is so mature in this region, and this is a great opportunity, and finance is available for it. The issue also of technology. The global now is talking about the 4IR. So this is a golden opportunity for Africa to fast track its industrialization strategy, and Africa has all the resources for all this 4IR because all the mines and materials that used for this revolution is in Africa. So we have to restructure our social and economic activities to best fit to the 4II. To do so, we have to have two immediate challenges need to be addressed: to realize the synergy effect by creating and operationalize Africa-wide industrialization strategy. And in our strategy in Badia, we avail finance for this, for IR industrialization and innovation, and to create coordinating, enabling environment for entrepreneurship, private sector growth, and provide significant, meaningful jobs at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Last but obviously not least, Dr. Thomas, if we can get some of your wisdom on this in terms of a reaction to the presentations that we've had and the opportunities and challenges on industrialization. Karib.
Asante sana. Thank you very much. So I think I'm the last thing standing between you and lunch. Try to be very, very quick. I'm coordinator for the industrialization program at the African Development Bank. It's one of our top 5 priority programs, and actually we allocated $60 billion over the next 10 years for this program. So I think the key message I want to pass is that as the African Development Bank, we truly believe in Africa's industrialization. It's a top priority for us, and we are actually very serious in terms of financing it. You know, you will hear, oh, maybe we should invest more in education, maybe we should invest more in building an economy of services, etc. All of this is true. But when I took that job 2 years ago, I asked our economic department and my colleagues, is it true? Do we need to industrialize? Some people tell me some other stories. In fact, unless you're Dubai or Singapore, there has not been any country or region in the world that has successfully developed without developing a manufacturing and industrial sector. So there is no other choice. You know, if you want to create jobs, build local knowledge, technologies, etc., investing in industrialization is key. At the bank, we invest about $10 billion per year on the continent. If you compare to the figures that were given by the colleagues from Germany who presented the Chinese, we are just as big as the Chinese. And we are actually the African Development Bank. We are owned by African governments. We have 2 windows, the public and the private sector windows. Through the public windows, our clients are the governments. We help them with infrastructure projects, local content policies, industrial strategies, etc., relevant to the sector. We have also private sector clients, so we finance corporates all across the continent, whether they're African or not, as long as the project takes place in Africa and has a positive development impact. We also work on the financial sector. I think we heard the Arab Development Bank, Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank, they say, oh, we have lines of credit from the African Development. We support all these financial organizations. We believe regional DFIs, sectoral DFIs, national DFIs have an important role to play. So I think that's my key message. I give you 2 or 3 examples of recent projects we approved in the region, in the industrial sector. Private sector projects, we are supporting the development of the Nacala corridor that goes from Malawi to Mozambique, developing port, railway infrastructure, etc. that can be used for agriculture, exports of goods, etc. Last year, by the way, the Nakala corridor, there was $300 million we provided to the project. In South Africa, we support SADC, which is, a public transport company with $100 million to mobilize, develop an app where, you can know where your minibus is, you can more easily find bus transport, etc. Mobility of people for employment is key and essential. In the public sector, we also support the SADC industrial strategy. We work with the SADC Secretariat, and we are very pleased with the collaboration. We think it's a very sound strategy. They have three priority value chains, pharmaceutical, agribusiness, and mining. So I think the World Bank supports agribusiness, the EU supports pharmaceutical, we support the mining sector. So we collaborate that way. We supported ESCOM with a syndicated loan of almost $1 billion last year as well, or 2 years ago maybe. And then we support the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. We support the establishment of a secretariat to fast-track its implementation. So last, I will conclude by saying this November in South Africa, we have what we call the Africa Investment Forum. It's the biggest investment platform on the continent. Last year, we mobilized $30 billion for projects in Africa. I do invite you to participate this November in Johannesburg. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And I think just with that, I would like to summarize that there seems to be quite a lot of energy and funding and financing be made available either through partners, through regional DFIs, and it's really a question of how, as a region, we are prepared and arranged and structured to absorb most of these projects and programs. I'd like to thank my panelists very much. I've been told that lunch is ready and is being served outside. I'll just give the instructions on how we shall go about that. But certainly this discussion in itself has perhaps made us aware of certain people and networks that we need to take this discussion further with. I may please urge you to do that in our following sessions, in lunch and afterwards. So a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much for your insights. We'll now break for lunch, and we will have lunch for VIP that will exit from that door over there. It's on your right, my left, and that will include the ministers, deputy ministers, permanent secretaries, deputy permanent secretaries, ambassadors, development partners, representatives of COMESA, EAC, AU, government directors and commissioners, regional commissioners and district commissioners. That will be on the third floor after that exit. Please make your way to the third floor for lunch. And we will have also, for others, the VIP area on the Gymkhana grounds to the right of the building. When you get out to your right, located slightly behind the building for the other delegates, invited guest speakers, CEOs, SADC committee and Tanzanian committee, directors. Coupons will be given as you walk outside the hall. So once again, thank you very much for your attention and your time for this session, and we'll welcome you back after lunch around 40 minutes, so we should